out, although not a lot of places reporting fog, so a little bit of a good news there. Hopefully we don't start to sink into it. Of our airports for today, hate to say it, you're probably tough out of luck if you are heading in and out of the Northeast. Later today, those conditions are going to deteriorate. I can almost guarantee there's going to be delays. So LaGuardia looking good now. Atlanta, San Francisco, all problem-free for the time being. Through the rest of the day, Philadelphia, Raleigh, Durham. This is the combinations of wind and rain, and that really can slow down those flights. So not the most pleasant travel situation for today. Also not very pleasant on the roads. As we continue to Minneapolis, Marcia was just showing us a few of those showers, possibly near enough by that we could have some delays and a little bit breezy out there, probably not having too many problems. So continuing to a couple of our other wet spots out here, it is some of those coastal areas, and we'll check back in coming up in a few minutes with Mike Seidel about all of this. But certainly as this area continues to make its way onshore, those conditions will deteriorate. The winds kick up, the rain very heavy for the next couple days along the East Coast. Big problems. Now, as we get to a couple of our other interstates around the country, we are going to the broad look. At least not a lot coming down the pipeline after this, but this is the time of year where things can develop quickly close to home, and we've seen a little bit of that, particularly with the system just off the Atlantic. We've been watching that for days. Sometimes those remnant frontal boundaries do kick up these areas, and that's exactly what happened here. But it's certainly causing, regardless of whether or not this is named and it becomes officially a tropical or subtropical system, and I'll explain the difference between those two coming up in the next hour. But you can see the circulation here, the wind, the rain, the high surf, the impacts are going to be exactly the same. So something that we need to take very seriously out here. In fact, we can take a look this morning in what's happening in Rodanthe, where the water is actually just sweeping up over the roads in some cases. So that is going to be a huge problem. We'll have more with Mike Seidel all through the morning, but the rain is going to be in some cases a few inches, a couple isolated spots over 3 inches, 1 to 3 in general, and then the high winds kicking up. So this is not going to be the next couple of days great beach days out there for trying to get out in some of these different locations. But there's reconnaissance, so those planes that'll be flying in and out of both this system and the system to the south for the next couple of days. Speaking of that system to the south, well, this is the other area we've been watching. It has finally moved north of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, where we had all those rain problems. Still the stray shower in Puerto Rico, but great that this has moved off because it was causing landslides, mudslides in the meantime. And this is what we expect this to do. We've got that low pressure area, and kind of the steering of all this directs it almost directly to the north. All these lines that you see are computer models, all the data that we know about these storms, and that's part of the reason we have reconnaissance flight that goes in there. But any sort of data we get about the storms plugs into computers, and the computers spit out what they think the storms are going to do. And you can see that there's a lot of consistency here, that this is going to head almost due north. So northern parts of New England need to watch this toward the end of the weekend. It's going to accelerate as it does move north, and that means it'll be a pretty fast mover, but still some of those coastal impacts. So those are a couple of the areas that we're watching. Otherwise, the rest of the Gulf and Caribbean, relatively quiet out there. We just had the landfall of a typhoon in China. Another storm building up in about the same area, taking a similar track. That is a typhoon we'll have to watch. Heather and Marshall?
Thanks,
All right,
Nicole.
thank you, Nicole.